The Atlantic is dark. A thin moon hangs above, its reflection fractured across restless water. Somewhere in that black expanse, a hunter waits, and somewhere else, a prey that is no prey at all. Two ships, born of different nations and different ideas of war, about to meet in a clash that history never allowed. The German raider Scharnhorst, fast, sleek, and dangerous. And the pride of Britain, HMS Hood, the mighty Hood, symbol of empire and naval prestige. In our timeline, they never truly crossed swords. Hood met her fate against Bismarck, while Scharnhorst fought her final stand against Duke of York. But here, in this imagined sea, they do not pass like shadows, they converge. The trigger is small, a shift in patrol routes, a storm that drives Scharnhorst west, a British signal intercept that sends Hood south. And suddenly, in late 1940, the two ships find themselves steering into each other's path. The stage is set. The North Atlantic breathes like a predator, waves heavy with wind, clouds hanging low. Britain's survival depends on convoys, lifelines of food and fuel. Germany knows it. Their strategy is simple. Cut the arteries, starve the island. Scharnhorst and her sister Gneisenau roam as wolves, striking merchantmen, scattering escorts. Hood, recalled from shadowing Bismarck, is tasked with interception. The Admiralty's orders are clear: bring the raider to battle. On Scharnhorst's bridge, Capitaine sur Sea. Kurt Caesar Hoffmann peers into the storm. His ship is young, her machinery humming with barely restrained power. 9 11-inch guns rest in triple turrets, their range formidable, their punch deadly. But Hoffmann knows her limitations. Against British capital ships with 15-inch guns, Scharnhorst is outmatched. His advantage lies in speed. 31 knots, faster than nearly anything afloat. If the prey is too strong, he will run. Yet pride is a dangerous current. The German Navy, born under the shadow of Versailles, seeks redemption through audacity. The chance to strike at Britain's greatest ship is a temptation Hoffmann cannot easily dismiss. And on Hood, Captain Ralph Kerr studies the sea with a different burden. Hood is a legend, but a fragile one. Laid down in the last war, modernized in pieces but never fully renewed, her armor is uneven, her deck thin, vulnerable to plunging fire. Yet her silhouette alone is a warning. At over 860 feet, she is the longest warship afloat, carrying 8 15-inch guns that can rip through steel at ranges beyond the horizon. She carries not only shells but the weight of national pride. Britain calls her the mighty Hood because the people need something mighty, something certain. Now, a wireless intercept has placed Scharnhorst to the southwest, slipping through the fog like a phantom. Convoys scatter, escorts scream into the void, but it is Hood who turns toward the contact. On her decks, sailors stand ready at battle stations. Breaches slam shut. Shells are lifted from magazines, gleaming giants of cordite and steel. The engines drive her forward, bow punching through swells as her wake foams white. The clock ticks. In this version of events, the meeting comes not in the Arctic nor in the shadow of Norway, but here, in the wide Atlantic where no shore is near. When they sight each other, it is no surprise, but a shock all the same. Hood emerges first, a gray monolith against the horizon, her bow cutting like a blade. Scharnhorst's lookouts cry out, and in an instant, the German ship is alive. Klaxons echo, boots hammer steel decks. Gunners scramble to their stations. Hoffmann has seconds to choose, run or fight. He glances at the seas, at the spread of waves, at the angle of the British hull. Hood is closing. She has the range. He knows his duty is to avoid destruction, to save his ship for the commerce war. And yet, deep inside, he feels the weight of history pressing. To flee before Hood would be to concede German weakness. To fight might be suicide, but he orders it anyway. Scharnhorst turns broadside, engines roaring as her great turrets traverse. In moments, the air is ripped apart. 9 German shells scream across the water, their arcs glowing faint against the clouds. The roar reaches Hood. A plume erupts close by, geysers rising higher than her mast. Spray crashes down onto her decks. Captain Kerr gives the only order possible: return fire. Hood's forward turrets thunder as one, the deck trembling beneath the recoil. 8 15-inch shells rise into the sky, each one heavier than a small car, streaking toward the German battlecruiser. The duel has begun. The first salvos are wild, thunder striking the sea itself. Columns of water tower between the ships, spray blinds lookouts. Fire control officers bark corrections, the ships adjust course, speed, and angle. It is a dance of giants, each searching for the other's heart. Each knowing that a single hit, a single moment of luck or precision could decide everything. On Hood's gunnery platform, officers peer through rangefinders, voices sharp with tension. Up 200, left 1 point, fire. Another broadside tears through the Atlantic, the sound rolling for miles. On Scharnhorst, the captain feels his ship shudder under the answering roar. Shells crash down around him. one plunging just short, throwing green water across the bow. His men cling to discipline. The German gunners adjust, calculating range faster than instinct. They fire again. For 10 minutes, neither finds its mark. The ocean is a cauldron of smoke and spray. The crews sweat, curse, steady their hands. The horizon flickers with fire, thunder rolling in endless waves. And then, at last, Scharnhorst strikes. A shell smashes into Hood's forward superstructure. The explosion rips through light plating, tearing men and steel into flame. Alarms blare. Hood shudders, but holds. Damage parties rush forward, dragging hoses, fighting smoke. The ship is hurt, but not crippled, and Hood answers. One shell plunges into Scharnhorst's deck near turret Caesar. The blast rips open plates, scatters crew, sends shrapnel scything through compartments. Hoffman grips the rail, feeling the tremor in his bones. His ship can take a few blows, but how many? The battle is young, but already the ocean knows blood. And in this alternate night, the question sharpens with every salvo. Will the symbol of Britain crush the wolf of Germany, or will the wolf's bite prove sharper than the legend? The answer will not come quickly. It will come in fire, in torn steel, in the choices of men trapped in the grip of destiny. And the Atlantic, vast and uncaring, will keep its silence. The night is torn by thunder, and yet dawn has not come. Across the waves, the two ships hammer at one another, their wakes carving white scars in the gray Atlantic. It is a duel of endurance, and every man on both sides feels it in his chest with each colossal detonation. On Hood's bridge, Captain Ralph Kerr leans forward, gripping the brass rail with steady hands. His face is lit by the flare of each gun's recoil, the thunder rolling through his bones. He knows the weaknesses of his ship better than most. Hood was designed for speed and range, not to withstand endless punishment from plunging shells. He must close the distance. At closer range, his 15-inch guns will strike flatter, faster, harder. The thinner armor of Scharnhorst will not endure for long, but Hoffman knows this too. On Scharnhorst's bridge, his gunnery officers urge more distance, more maneuver. Their ship, faster and more modern, must keep the range long, where her high-velocity 11-inch shells can rake Hood's vulnerable deck. It is a contest of wills, of tactics as much as steel. The German captain orders a turn, engines roaring as Scharnhorst begins to widen the gap. Hood answers, engines straining, bow plunging into spray. She cannot quite match Scharnhorst's speed, but she can cut the angle, close the trap. The crews below deck sweat in the roar of turbines, knowing nothing but vibration, the hiss of steam, and the distant thud of battle above. Minutes stretch. Salvos thunder. The sea rises and falls in curtains of spray. And then, once more, luck finds its mark. A German shell arcs high and plunges down onto Hood's aft deck. The explosion rips open plates, sending fire racing through ready-use ammunition lockers. A roar of secondary blasts erupts, smoke boiling into the night sky. Men are thrown clear, bodies tumbling into the ocean. Flames lick skyward, licking at the towering masts. On Hood's bridge, Captain Kerr feels the shock run through the ship. He knows how fragile his vessel is to plunging fire. His heart pounds, but his voice is steady. Damage parties aft. Hold your fire control steady, keep firing. And Hood does. Her forward turrets unleash another broadside, thunder cracking across the horizon. At nearly 20,000 yards, one shell slams home. It smashes into Scharnhorst's starboard belt, piercing steel and erupting in a storm of sparks and flame. A magazine deep below shakes, but does not ignite. Hoffman's men rush to flood compartments, hands trembling as they slam valves. Water pours in, slowing the German ship. For a moment, both ships limp, each wounded, each carrying fire in its belly. Yet neither yields. The crews feel it. The contest is now personal. Pride against pride, legend against ambition. The mighty Hood, symbol of an empire under siege, against Scharnhorst, the wolf of the Atlantic, embodiment of Germany's defiance. The range narrows, 15,000 yards, then 12. The salvos come faster, heavier, every broadside a gamble with fate. Geysers rise and crash like towers of liquid steel. Smoke drifts across the decks, choking gunners, blinding officers. Sparks rain down from twisted rigging. Inside Scharnhorst's plotting room, young officers trace firing solutions with trembling hands. They know the stakes. Every second counts. Every error may mean death. And yet, through discipline and fear, they continue. One correction. One more salvo. It lands. A shell smashes into Hood's forward bridge structure. The blast shatters glass, sends bodies tumbling, twists steel into molten ruin. Dozens fall in an instant. Yet Captain Kerr survives, staggering but standing, his voice hoarse but steady. Hold course. Close the range. His men obey. They fight on, not because survival is certain, but because Hood is more than a ship. She is a promise to the people of Britain that the sea still belongs to them. And that promise answers in fire. At 10,000 yards, Hood's guns find their rhythm. One salvo walks across Scharnhorst's deck, smashing open her forward turrets. Flames erupt, ammunition cooks off, smoke billows in choking clouds. The roar inside is like the howl of a volcano. Men scream, engines shudder, and still Scharnhorst claws forward, her remaining turrets roaring defiance. Hoffman grips the edge of his chart table, jaw tight, knowing what history demands. He cannot retreat now, not with the eyes of his crew upon him. To turn away is to admit weakness. To stand and fight, even crippled, is to earn a place in the saga of the Kriegsmarine. The distance shrinks to 8,000 yards. It is no longer long-range gunnery. It is knife fighting with steel giants. Shells strike and detonate almost instantly, tearing huge rents in armor, throwing fountains of metal into the sky. The sea itself feels alive, heaving under the fury of battle. On Hood, sailors cough through smoke, drag hoses across burning decks, and load shell after shell, their arms trembling from exhaustion. They know each one could be the last, but they do not falter. On Scharnhorst, compartments flood, corridors collapse, men claw through twisted wreckage to reach pumps to save what little stability remains. And still, her guns roar. This is no longer strategy, it is survival. Two ships locked together, bleeding into the waves. Then, a moment of terrible clarity. At 6,000 yards, Hood scores a crippling hit. One shell plunges deep into Scharnhorst's midsection, tearing through bulkheads, igniting cordite. A monstrous explosion tears open her hull, flames gouting skyward. The ship staggers, slowing, smoke boiling from her wounds. And yet, impossibly, one last broadside answers. 3 shells rise into the storm, arcing toward Hood's fragile deck. One falls short. One sails wide, and one finds its mark. It plunges into Hood just aft of her funnels. For a heartbeat, there is silence. Then a roar that shakes the heavens. Flames erupt, racing down into magazines. A column of fire and steel rises into the night as Hood is torn apart from within. Men scream, the sea catches bodies and wreckage alike. The pride of Britain is broken in a single instant, a single stroke of fate. And Scharnhorst, herself crippled, listing bleeding smoke, watches as her mighty foe vanishes into the dark waters of the Atlantic. But this is not triumph, it is tragedy. For Scharnhorst too is dying. Her fires rage unchecked, her compartments flood. She limps into the storm, vanishing into darkness, not victorious, but merely alive, for now. The Atlantic swallows the wreckage. Silence returns, broken only by the cries of survivors drifting in the swell. And history has changed. But what does this new history mean? The Atlantic swells close over the shattered remains of HMS Hood. Flames die to embers, smoke drifts into the night sky, and men cling to wreckage in the freezing water. For the Royal Navy, the loss is unthinkable. The mighty Hood was not just a warship, she was a symbol, the embodiment of Britain's naval power. Her destruction sends shockwaves far beyond the Atlantic. Word spreads fast. In London, the Admiralty listens in grim silence as signals confirm the unthinkable. Hood, lost with nearly all hands. Only a scattering of survivors remain, clinging to life in the vast ocean. Families wait, unaware that their sons and fathers have already been claimed by the sea. Newspapers the next morning will speak in thunderous tones, headlines etched in grief and disbelief. For Germany, the news is intoxicating. Scharnhorst, battered and burning but afloat, limps back toward Norway under escort. Her crew, half dead with exhaustion, tend to wounds and battle damage with trembling hands. Hoffman knows he has barely saved his ship, yet propaganda will tell another story. Berlin broadcasts victory. The once invincible Hood lies at the bottom of the sea, slain by the guns of the Kriegsmarine. Posters are printed, speeches made. In Germany's darkest winter, this is light. Proof, they say, that the Reich's navy can defy Britain's might. But victories at sea are not measured only in wrecks. They ripple outward, shifting strategy, morale, and politics. Britain reels, but she does not collapse. The Admiralty knows what must be done. Hood's destruction cannot go unanswered. Orders flash across the Atlantic, battleships sail, carriers deploy, every available vessel is thrown into the hunt for Scharnhorst. The German raider, though celebrated, is crippled. She lists heavily, her engines stutter, compartments flood with each swell. Men fight pumps day and night, sealing bulkheads with scraps of steel, praying they can make harbor before British vengeance descends. The wolf that slew the lion now limps, bleeding, across a hostile ocean. Meanwhile, in Britain's streets, grief hardens into fury. The people mourn, but they also demand justice. Prime Minister Churchill addresses Parliament, his words heavy with rage and resolve. The Hood may be lost, but Britain is not. We shall answer this blow with fire upon the seas. The House roars approval. There will be no wavering. The convoys, lifeblood of the island, remain at risk. With Hood gone, escorts strain under pressure. Merchant captains scan the horizon with dread, knowing that Scharnhorst's very survival emboldens German raiders. Even crippled, Her existence forces the Royal Navy to stretch thin, to cover routes with ships not ready for decisive combat. In Berlin, naval planners exult but argue. Scharnhorst's damage is severe. Some say she should be retired from commerce raiding, kept as a fleet in being, a threat that forces Britain to divert resources. Others, more daring, whisper that the momentum must continue, that if Hood can fall, perhaps others will too. They imagine a future where German battlecruisers stalk the Atlantic freely, breaking Britain's will. But reality intrudes. Scharnhorst's hull is scarred, her turrets ruined, her crew decimated. She barely makes port, crawling into Trondheim like a wounded beast. Repairs will take months. The Kriegsmarine, despite its propaganda, knows the truth. This victory is fleeting, and every raid courts annihilation. And yet, for a moment, the world shifts. In Washington, American naval officers study the reports with sharp eyes. If Hood can be lost so suddenly, what of the convoys carrying American aid? Roosevelt's administration feels the tremor. The Atlantic grows more dangerous by the day, and America's entry into the war inches closer. In Britain, another truth hardens. No ship, however mighty, is untouchable. Hood's fate underscores what many already knew, that older designs, even legendary ones, are vulnerable in the modern age. Carriers, submarines, radar, all are changing the face of naval war. The Royal Navy begins to rethink its strategy, accelerating carrier production, investing more in radar and escort groups. The sea, once ruled by great gun duels, is entering a new era. But the men who fought that night do not think of eras. They think of survival, of smoke, of screams. Survivors from Hood, pulled half dead from the ocean by escorting destroyers, tell their stories in hushed tones. They speak of thunder, of flames, of the final explosion that tore their world apart. Some weep, some rage, all carry scars. And in Germany, sailors from Scharnhorst remember their own nightmare. The deck awash with fire, comrades torn apart, the ship shuddering beneath them. They know how close death came, how narrow the margin of survival was. They remember the roar of Hood's guns, the towering geysers, the moments where a single shell might have ended them all. The legend of Hood is gone, but in its place rises something else, a question. What does it mean when even the most powerful ships can fall in minutes? What does it mean for Britain's pride, for Germany's hope, for the future of naval war itself? In this alternate world, the answer unfolds in grim new campaigns. The Royal Navy surges into the Atlantic with fury, hunting German raiders more aggressively than ever. The Germans, despite their victory, become cautious, wary of losing their scarce capital ships. Yet the memory of Hood's fall emboldens them too, proof that even giants can bleed. The Atlantic grows darker, deadlier, more uncertain, and in the silence of the deep, HMS Hood rests, her broken hull a reminder of how swiftly fortune can turn, how even legends are mortal. But this story is not yet finished, because Scharnhorst, bloodied but alive, still prowls the seas, and Britain, vowing vengeance, will not rest until the account is settled. The question is not if they will meet again. The question is how and at what cost. The storm has passed, but the Atlantic does not forgive. Weeks after the destruction of Hood, Scharnhorst limps in and out of dry docks, scarred by fire, patched with steel plates that hide the wounds, but not the memory. Her crew walks with haunted eyes, proud of survival, proud of victory, but never free of the knowledge that their ship, for all its speed and power, nearly shared Hood's fate. In Britain, the loss becomes a rallying cry. Churchill's vow is not forgotten. The Royal Navy reshapes its deployments, hunting with ferocity, convoys ringed with escorts, carriers and cruisers lurking like avengers in the gray seas. Every sailor aboard knows what happened to Hood. They do not speak of it openly, but they carry it in their hearts. And for every German raider sighted, there is a personal edge to the pursuit. It is not strategy alone, it is vengeance. The winter seas of 1941 grind on, convoys steam, German raiders prowl, and the Atlantic becomes a chessboard where every piece bleeds. Scharnhorst, repaired but not reborn, sails again faster than most, but no longer invincible in the eyes of her own men. Hoffman feels it, the pride of battle, the curse of survival. To have destroyed Hood is triumph, but it has also painted a target on his ship. The Royal Navy will never forget, never forgive. And so the hunt continues. Each sighting, each radar contact, each shadow on the horizon brings with it the ghost of Hood's final explosion. For the British, it is a debt, for the Germans, a burden. Then, one night in the icy waters of the Arctic, the circle closes. The Royal Navy has learned from its grief. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, an entire task force converges on Scharnhorst. Radar now tilts the balance. No longer do optics and chance decide. Now, electronic eyes pierce the storm. The clash is sudden and merciless. British destroyers knife through the snow, torpedoes streaking into the black. Scharnhorst swerves, her speed still defiant, but the ocean is thick with steel. One torpedo strikes, then another. Her engines falter. She slows. And then the great guns of Duke of York open fire. Shell after shell hammers her decks, tearing turrets, ripping hull plates, silencing her roar. Flames bloom across her length, men scrambling in panic, others holding to their posts with grim resolve. Hoffman remains on the bridge, steady to the end, knowing that the sea is about to claim what victory spared. In our real history, this is where Scharnhorst's story ended. And in this alternate path, it ends the same. Because no amount of courage, no glimmer of past triumph, can withstand the full fury of the Royal Navy when vengeance drives its guns. The ship that slew Hood, the Wolf of the Atlantic, dies beneath an avalanche of fire and steel. She rolls, shudders, and disappears beneath the Arctic waves, taking nearly 2,000 men into the frozen deep. And so, the balance returns. Britain has its vengeance, but not its pride restored. Hood still lies silent in the Atlantic, her wreck a tomb for the men who carried the Empire's hopes. Scharnhorst joins her in another sea, another grave. Two giants of steel locked together not only in battle but in fate. The world takes note. Britain learns that no symbol is too mighty to fall, that strength must be rebuilt, modernized, reborn. Germany learns that victory without numbers, without allies, without strategy is a fleeting illusion. The Atlantic swallows them both, impartial, eternal. But for the men who fought, it is not illusion, it is memory. Survivors from British destroyers who pulled broken men from icy waters remember the haunted eyes of Scharnhorst's sailors. Men who had once cheered the sinking of Hood, but now knew the sea's indifference. Survivors from Hood, few as they were, remember the thunder of their ship's guns, the pride of serving aboard her, and the fire that consumed her in seconds. What if Hood had fought Scharnhorst? In this alternate thread of history, she did, and the battle was fast, brutal, unforgettable. A clash not only of steel, but of meaning, of pride, of vengeance, of the fragile balance between legend and reality. The truth, hidden in the depths of the Atlantic, is that both ships were doomed from the moment war began. Hood was too old, too vulnerable. Scharnhorst too isolated, too overmatched by Britain's endless resources. Their fates were sealed by strategy long before shells flew. And yet, for a single night, they met as equals, giants in the storm. The ocean keeps their secrets, but their stories linger. In steel, in memory, in the restless imagination of what might have been. And as you think of these ships, of the men who stood upon their decks, ask yourself, what does it mean when even the strongest symbols can shatter in moments? Does it weaken a nation, or does it forge its resolve? The sea has no answers, only silence and the distant thunder of waves. If you want to continue exploring the great what-ifs of history, the stories of battles fought, and those that never were, stay with us. There are more oceans to cross, more legends to test, more questions to ask.
Hey, if you've made it all the way to the end, that means you're truly interested. And this is only the beginning of our alternate histories. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss the most unexpected twists of the past. See you in the next video.